Welcome back to Cybersecurity Unmasked.
Mm,
Remember our deep dive last week? We were all about 5G and how it's shaking things up for IT infrastructure. I mean, all that speed and the potential, it was mind-blowing.
totally.
But this week we're kind of shifting gears. Still talking about growth, though. When your business takes off,
Yeah,
which is awesome. But it can really throw some curveballs if you're not careful, especially when it comes to your security strategy.
for sure.
So to help us unpack all of this, we're diving into our recent blog post, Optimizing IT Infrastructure for Scalability and Growth. It's packed with insights, and, well, we're here to kind of extract those golden nuggets for you today.
Absolutely.
Now, you always have this knack for taking, like, the most complex security stuff and breaking it down into things we can actually use. So walk me through it. Where do we even begin when we want to make sure our security measures can keep up with, all our big dreams?
Honestly, the very first thing that always pops into my mind is that initial assessment.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let's take a good look at where we're at right now with our cybersecurity. You wouldn't just randomly start adding floors to a building without checking the foundation first.
Right. It's like making sure there aren't any cracks that could turn into, a major fault line.
Exactly. A thorough assessment. It's like a checkup. It helps you zero in on those vulnerabilities, those little security gaps.
Yeah.
They might not seem like a big deal when you're small, but as you grow those little cracks, they can become big problems.
Okay, so how do businesses even go about this assessment thing? Is it something they can kind of DIY, or do they need to call in the experts?
I mean, there are definitely resources out there for businesses to do some self-assessment, for sure.
Yeah.
But to be totally honest, having an objective, experienced set of eyes on it, that's invaluable.
Makes sense.
And actually, that's where we come in.
Oh, right.
We offer like a really comprehensive IT assessment. It helps businesses get a clear picture of where their security stands right now.
It's a fantastic resource. And I have to say, I'm always a little surprised, at how many businesses just haven't taken advantage of it yet. It's free, by the way.
Yeah.
It's free.
It's like, skipping a checkup with your doctor when you know you probably should go.
I know. Like preventative care, but for your business's, digital health.
Exactly.
But speaking of digital health, what about the cloud?
Oh, yeah, the cloud. Everyone's talking about the cloud.
Our blog post really gets into how important cloud computing is for scalability, but I think with all the hype, it's easy to forget about the security implications.
Totally. It's like everyone's rushing to get on the cloud, but are they even thinking about how to stay safe up there?
Right.
What are some of the unique security challenges they need to be prepared for?
Well, the cloud is amazing, don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Offers incredible scalability, flexibility,
Mm-hmm.
but it also brings like a whole new set of considerations.
Yeah.
One of the biggest ones is this thing called the shared responsibility model.
Mm-hmm. So you're relying on the cloud provider, for some aspects of security, for sure.
Right.
But ultimately, you are still responsible for protecting your own data, your applications.
So it's not just, flip a switch and suddenly everything's magically secure in the cloud?
Oh, I wish there was a magic switch, but no.
But
One of the most common mistakes we see, it's so simple, but people leave the default security settings unchanged.
oh, wow.
It's like leaving the keys in your car,
You're asking for trouble.
pretty much.
Okay, so default settings, big no-no. What else do we need to watch out for when it comes to cloud security?
Misconfigurations, that's a big one.
Hmm.
Cloud environments, they can get pretty complex.
Yeah.
And honestly, even small errors in setup can have massive consequences. Like, for example, I've seen cases with, S3 buckets,
Oh, yeah.
which are basically like storage containers in the cloud, right?
Right.
Accidentally configured to be publicly accessible. Anyone could just walk in and take the data.
You're making me sweat a little just thinking about that.
Yeah, it's a serious thing.
So for those businesses who are migrating to the cloud, what's the first step to getting that configuration right, avoiding those pitfalls?
It really comes down to expertise, to be honest. Having a team, whether it's in-house or, a trusted partner like us, it's essential to have someone who really understands cloud security.
Yep.
Someone who can set up those settings the right way, implement strong access controls, make sure your data is really locked down.
I think that's a key takeaway.
Yeah.
The cloud can be an amazing tool for growth, no question. But you need that expertise to handle all the security stuff that comes with it. And speaking of expertise, our blog post also talks about the need for network upgrades, things like bandwidth and load balancing.
Yes.
How does that all tie into a strong security posture?
Okay, so as your business grows, so does the volume of data and traffic on your network, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
It's like a highway getting more and more congested.
Oh, I like that.
Upgrading your bandwidth, it's like adding more lanes to the highway. More data can flow smoothly.
Okay.
Load balancing, that's like distributing the traffic so you don't get any bottlenecks.
Hmm.
But just like a busy highway, you need robust security measures to kind of manage all that activity.
So it's not just about making things faster, it's about making them more secure at the same time.
Exactly.
Got
As
it.
your network grows, you have what we call a bigger attack surface. So basically more potential entry points for, well, the bad guys.
Makes sense.
Things like firewalls, intrusion detection systems, strong encryption, all that becomes even more critical as you scale.
So it's like adding those security cameras and patrol cars to our busy highway analogy.
Yeah.
They're there to, prevent accidents and keep things running smoothly.
Exactly. And, as you grow, you also need to think about segmenting your network.
Okay, what does that mean, segmenting?
It's like, imagine dividing that highway into sections, right? With different levels of access. You wouldn't want someone driving like a beat-up old truck to have the same access as someone driving a high-security armored car, would you?
Definitely not, no.
So network segmentation, it's about creating those security zones within your network. So if there's a breach in one area, it doesn't automatically mean they have access to the whole system.
That's a great analogy. So it's about containing those potential breaches and kind of, limiting the damage if something does happen.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so we've talked about assessing your current security, navigating the cloud securely, making sure your network can handle the growth. But what about looking even further ahead? Our blog post really emphasizes this idea of future-proofing security, not just a nice-to-have, but a must-have.
Right.
What does that actually mean in a practical sense?
Yeah, how do we actually do that?
It's about anticipating the unknown, like building in the flexibility to adapt to future threats and technologies, right? Think of it like buying a suitcase. You don't want to buy a tiny one if you plan on taking longer trips in the future.
Right, yeah.
You want one that can expand, accommodate more as your needs change.
Makes sense.
So we're not talking about just, slap on a few security patches and we're good.
Yeah.
It's a much deeper, more strategic approach.
Okay, so what does that look like?
It's about choosing solutions that can grow and evolve with your business. Think modular hardware and software, the kind that can be easily upgraded or patched as new vulnerabilities pop up. And that's where choosing the right vendors and partners, that becomes really critical.
Yeah, for sure.
You want to work with companies that are really on the cutting edge of cybersecurity, constantly innovating, constantly updating their solutions to stay ahead of the curve.
So it's about being proactive, not reactive.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, let's just do a quick recap for a second. We've talked about assessing your current security posture. We've talked about embracing the cloud securely, but doing it the right way.
Yeah.
Upgrading your network infrastructure and, future-proofing your security. It's a lot, right?
That is a lot to take in.
I know. But each piece is really crucial to making sure your business can grow without sacrificing security.
It really is.
To kind of reinforce that point, there's a line from our blog post that I thought was so good. It says, investing in high-quality security solutions will keep your infrastructure safe while growing with your needs.
That is such a good line. And I think it highlights how security is an investment, not an expense. Think about it. Like, how much would a data breach cost your business?
Oh, a lot.
Right. In terms of lost revenue, damage to your reputation, legal fees, adds up quickly.
Yeah.
Investing in robust security up front, it's so much more cost-effective than dealing with the consequences of a security incident down the road.
That's a really good point. It's like prevention is better than cure, as they say. And it also ties into something else I wanted to mention. It's not just a one-time fix, right? This isn't, set it and forget it.
Yep.
It's an ongoing process.
Always.
Okay, so how do you think about that?
It's like, think of regular health checkups and exercise.
I like that.
You don't go to the doctor once and then you're done, right?
Right, yeah.
You have to be proactive, vigilant to maintain your well-being.
I love that analogy because it really does drive home the point that security is an ongoing commitment.
Yeah.
And for our listeners out there, many of whom, are busy entrepreneurs wearing multiple hats, they might not have the time or the in-house to manage all things cybersecurity, really effectively.
It's true. They're busy, and that's where we can step in.
Right.
To provide that support, that peace of mind. And that way they can focus on what they do best, which is growing their businesses.
Absolutely. Well said. We've covered so much in this deep dive already.
We have.
From assessing your current security setup to future-proofing your strategy.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up part one, I really want to dig into this concept of zero trust security.
Zero trust. Yeah, it's a hot topic these days.
It is.
And for good reason. Basically, it's a security framework built on the principle of never trust, always verify.
Okay, so no more assuming that just because someone's inside the network, they're automatically trustworthy.
Exactly. With zero trust, you're constantly verifying every user, every device, every single connection. It's like having security checkpoints throughout your entire network.
Okay.
Making sure that only authorized, entities have access to the resources they need.
And that seems especially important these days with so much remote work and cloud computing, where that traditional network perimeter, it's getting blurrier and blurrier.
Absolutely. In zero trust, it's all about securing access regardless of location.
Okay.
It's about verifying identity, enforcing policies at every single point of interaction.
I'm really curious to learn more about how businesses can actually put these zero trust principles into practice.
Concept of zero trust security. It's definitely like a bit of a shift from those traditional security models.
Yeah.
But it's becoming so crucial in the world we live in now.
Totally. And I think it's helpful to kind of reframe it, right? Instead of trust but verify, it's more like never trust, always verify.
Exactly.
And I think our listeners are really eager to hear like how this actually plays out, in a real world business.
Yeah, absolutely. So zero trust, it's really about assuming that any user, any device, any connection could be compromised.
Okay.
So you're constantly verifying, authenticating everything, regardless of whether it's inside or outside your network.
So instead of just having like this big wall around your network and assuming everything inside is safe, it's more like you're setting up these security checkpoints like throughout the entire infrastructure.
Yes, exactly. It's like having security guards at every single door, checking IDs, making sure everyone belongs there.
Right.
And it applies to everything, users, devices, applications, data. You're essentially creating like a web of trust based on continuous verification.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I'm starting to get it now. But how does a business actually go about implementing this? It sounds really complex.
It can be, but there are definitely some, key principles and steps you can take. The first one is to define your protect surface.
Okay, what's a protect surface?
So basically, what are the most critical assets, data in your organization? What needs the highest level of protection?
So it's about prioritizing. Figuring out, okay, where do we need to focus our efforts first?
Exactly. You can't protect everything equally. So you got to figure out where your crown jewels are and then build your zero trust strategy around them.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's next?
Once you know what you need to protect, then you got to establish strong identity and access management. This is where things like multi-factor authentication come in, single sign-on, role-based access control.
Oh, yeah. All those things we hear about.
It's about verifying the identity of every user, every device, before granting them access to any resources.
So it's kind of like making sure everyone has the right credentials and clearances before they can enter a secure facility.
Exactly. And it's not just about, who they are, but also what device they're using.
Okay.
Is it a company-issued laptop that's been properly secured? Or is it, someone's personal phone that might have, malware on it?
That's a good point. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
You can't just assume a device is safe, even if you know the user is authorized.
Exactly. And that's where things like device posture checks come in.
Okay.
You can use software to actually assess the security of a device before allowing it to connect to your network.
So it's checking to see if it's healthy, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. You might require that devices have up-to-date antivirus software, operating systems, all of that before they can access sensitive data.
That's pretty cool. It's like a digital bouncer at the door, checking everyone's ID, making sure they meet the dress code.
I love that analogy. That's a good one. But there's more. You also need to segment your network, just like we talked about earlier. But with zero trust, you're kind of taking that segmentation to the next level, creating micro-segments around those critical assets.
So it's instead of just having these big sections, you're breaking things down into smaller, more, granular zones.
Exactly. You're creating these little security bubbles around each critical asset, so it makes it much, much harder for attackers to move laterally within your network, even if they manage to breach one area.
That makes sense. Okay, so we've got strong identity and access management, device posture checks, and microsegmentation. Is there anything else businesses need to be thinking about when implementing zero trust?
Yes. One more important piece is continuous monitoring and logging.
Oh.
You need to be constantly watching for any, suspicious activity and have systems in place to alert you to potential threats. Think of it like, having security cameras and motion detectors throughout your building.
Got it. So you're collecting data on everything that's happening on your network and then using that data to identify and respond to any threats in real time.
Exactly. And this is where artificial intelligence and machine learning can play a huge role.
Oh, yeah. AI is everywhere these days.
It is, and for good reason. You can use AI-powered security tools to analyze those logs, identify patterns, detect anomalies that could indicate an attack.
That's pretty amazing. So it sounds like zero trust is all about layers upon layers of security, right? You're not just relying on one thing. You're combining multiple approaches to create a really strong defense.
That's a great way to put it. It's a holistic approach to security. It's built on that foundation of never trust, always verify.
Right.
And when it's implemented effectively, it can really, really reduce the risk of data breaches, cyber attacks.
This is so fascinating. I'm already thinking about all the ways our team can incorporate these zero trust principles into our own security strategy.
And that's such a great point to bring up. It's not just about talking about, it's about putting it into action.
Right.
And that often means, investing in the right security solutions.
You're right. And IT BizTech really does have a comprehensive set of services designed to help businesses with all of this.
We do, from identity and access management solutions to network segmentation tools, AI-powered threat detection. We've got everything businesses need to actually make zero trust a reality.
That's great to hear. Okay, before we wrap up part 2, I want to circle back to that idea of future-proofing that we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
How does zero trust fit into the bigger picture of, building a security strategy that can actually adapt to the ever-changing threat landscape?
That's a great question. I see zero trust as a foundational element of any future-proof security strategy.
Okay.
It's not really a specific technology or a specific solution, but more like a framework, a way of thinking about security that's going to be relevant for years to come.
I like that. So even as new technologies emerge, new threats arise. Those core principles, never trust, always verify, continuous monitoring, that's all still going to be essential.
Absolutely, because at its core, zero trust is about minimizing risk and protecting your most valuable assets.
Yeah.
And that will always be a top priority for businesses, no matter what the future looks like.
I love that. It's like building a house on a solid foundation.
Yeah.
No matter what storms come your way, you've got a strong base to withstand them.
Exactly. And just like you wouldn't build a house without a blueprint, you shouldn't build a security strategy without a solid framework like zero trust to guide you.
That's a great way to put it. I think that's a perfect note to end part 2 on.
I agree.
We've explored this concept of zero trust, broken down its key principles, discussed its importance in, future-proofing our security. But there's one more crucial aspect of scaling security that we haven't touched on yet, and that's the human element.
Yes, the human factor. We can have all the fancy security technology in the world, but if our employees aren't trained and aware of cybersecurity best practices, we're still leaving ourselves wide open.
Exactly. That's what we're going to dive into in part 3. We'll discuss the importance of, security awareness training, how to create a culture of security within your organization, and some practical steps you can take to empower your employees to become your first line of defense. In the last couple of parts, we really dug deep into, assessing where your security stands, making sure the cloud is a safe space for your business, and of course, all about that zero trust model.
Yeah.
But there's one thing we haven't gotten to fully explore yet, and it's often called the weakest link in the whole security chain.
You're talking about us.
Right.
Humans. The human element.
Exactly. Because even with the most cutting-edge technology, the most airtight security frameworks, human error, that can still trip us up and leave businesses vulnerable.
Totally. I mean, you could have all the firewalls and intrusion detection systems money can buy, but all it takes is one wrong click,
Yeah.
One employee accidentally downloads some malware and it can all be for nothing.
It's like you have that top-of-the-line security system in your house, but you leave the front door wide open.
Exactly.
So how do we fix that? How do we make sure our employees are our first line of defense, not a potential weak spot?
It all starts with good security awareness training.
Okay.
And I'm not talking about those boring, once-a-year compliance modules that everyone just clicks through to get it over with.
No, we've all been there. Those don't really cut it.
Yeah.
So what does effective security awareness training actually look like?
It's got to be engaging.
Okay.
It has to make cybersecurity feel relevant to their everyday work.
Hmm.
Real-world examples, interactive scenarios, even a little humor can go a long way to making the information stick.
Okay, so instead of just lecturing about abstract threats, it's more about showing them, hey, this is how it could actually show up in your inbox, or this is what it looks like on your social media feed.
Exactly. And it's not just about spotting those phishing emails either. It's about building a whole security mindset, a culture of awareness, where everyone understands, hey, protecting sensitive data is important, and these best practices, we follow them for a reason.
So it's not just an IT issue. It's a company-wide thing.
100%. It's about creating a culture where everyone understands the risks, knows how to handle them, and feels comfortable speaking up if they see something fishy.
I like that. But how do we actually get there? How do we go beyond, just training sessions and actually build that security-first culture?
It takes a multi-pronged approach. Leadership needs to set the tone from the top down.
Okay, so more than just saying it's important.
Way more. They have to actually demonstrate it. Actions speak louder than words.
Right.
So when employees see that leadership takes security seriously, they're more likely to do the same.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about communication? How do we keep security top of mind without, overwhelming everyone?
Regular communication is key, but it has to be short, sweet, and to the point. Maybe short videos, infographics, or even like fun quizzes to keep those concepts fresh.
I like that, bite-sized learning. What about using, real-life examples, case studies?
Those are gold. When you share stories about actual data breaches, things that have happened to companies like yours, it suddenly becomes way more real.
Right, it's not just hypothetical anymore. And I've seen some companies use gamification, too.
Oh, yeah, gamification is great. It makes security training fun, a little competitive.
Exactly. Challenges, points, leaderboards, it all helps.
Totally. And don't forget about positive reinforcement. Shout out those employees who are doing a great job practicing good security habits.
It shows that it's a team effort.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that their efforts are appreciated.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into scaling security, let's recap. We talked about starting with a good assessment, figuring out where you stand, making sure you're embracing the cloud the right way. We dug deep into zero trust and future-proofing your strategy. But as we've been saying all along, technology is only part of the story.
Exactly. The human side of things is crucial.
Absolutely. Building a culture where everyone is aware, engaged, and feels empowered to contribute to security, that's essential to protecting your business, especially as you grow.
Couldn't agree more.
And remember, at IT BizTech, we're here to help you every step of the way. Assessments, training programs, we can work with you to build a security strategy that scales with your business.
Exactly.
And that makes your employees your strongest asset. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into cybersecurity.
Our pleasure.
Until next time, stay safe, stay secure, and keep those businesses growing.